Story 1. I have a friend who I like to call aggressively inclusive. One thing I notice he does often is make sure that the quiet person in a group is given the opportunity to speak. He is very good at recognizing when they have something to say. For example, during a group discussion, right after person A finishes speaking, person B starts to talk just as the quiet person also begins to speak. The aggressively inclusive friend will often, after person B is done speaking but before the conversation moves on, interject with, "Wait, real quick, quiet person, were you about to say something?" This allows the quiet person to speak without feeling like they were interrupting. I am not sure if he does this consciously or if he simply cares about people enough to instinctively help the more socially timid individuals find their voice. He has done this many times, and I know people appreciate it. Story 2. When someone remembers small details you mentioned weeks ago and brings them up casually, it means they have genuinely been paying attention. Story 3. When they are comfortable being silly or goofy, that is truly a sign that they are comfortable in their own skin and not trying to be someone they are not. Story 4. Can admit when they are wrong. Most people I meet either double down or immediately try to make it somebody else's fault when they mess up. I have a lot of respect for someone who can admit fault. Story 5. Curiosity about everything. A specific example that comes to mind is when you mention a song or band they are not familiar with, and they immediately play it without being asked or suggested. Story 6. They are inclusive. I think that is the word I am looking for. Most people comment on the odd behavior of others around them, but someone special makes the person feel normal or defends them for doing it. Story 7. When someone laughs at their own terrible jokes without shame. If you can enjoy your own uniqueness, we will probably get along. Story 8. When they are comfortable with animals and notice their presence. As a pet lover, I consider it a major positive sign. Story 9. In college, there was a group headed to a party. One of us dropped whatever trash he was carrying on the sidewalk. She hung back, picked it up, and dropped it in the nearest trash receptacle. That was more than 30 years ago. I have not been in contact with any of them, but this act has really stood out all these years. Story 10. Pacifism behind the wheel. It seems small, yet it can reveal so much about a person if they have the ability to brush off other people being rude on the road. I don't mean just brushing it off and maybe saying your own snide remark inside the safety of your car, but having no desire to engage in road rage at all. One of my ex-partners would happily show grace to other drivers even if the other driver was in the wrong, and it was the biggest breath of fresh air. My father had road rage so bad I feared for my life. It is a huge green flag for me when people recognize how dangerous and foolish it is. Story 11. When they are willing to do things, I could just say an observation like, "Look at this wall, it has very slim walking room and looks climbable." And I am suddenly drawn with them to experiment with my theory. Or like, "Hey, what if we go get ice cream right now?" "We cannot, we are in the middle of a shift. Cover for me." And then they are gone with an impulsive yet thoroughly planned method to bring us ice cream right the second we thought about it. They remind me that life is open world. I can do whatever I want. My favorite example was when I met a friend and we saw an injured bee. "Ah man, too bad we cannot help him," I said foolishly. "Who decided we cannot?" she said, and the bee was given fruit and happiness until he left on his own terms. Story 12. If we are being very specific, people who sit on the floor casually, people who pull blankets over other people's toes, and people who are just willing to do random things. Story 13. He remembered that I mentioned liking lavender tea once in passing, and the next time I came over, he had bought some. He was not trying to impress me. He just genuinely paid attention to what I said. Story 14. Their bookshelf. If they just happened to have The Lord of the Rings, old engineering texts, dairy cattle management books, and Anabaptist history books on their shelf, they would be my kind of person. That is unlikely to happen. The key is being flexible enough to enjoy people anyway, even if we are not a perfect pairing. Story 15. Green flag. Laughing at inappropriate humor. Red flag. Laughing at mean or personally insulting humor. Story 16. The ability to communicate complex ideas or controversial opinions without emotional charge. Emotionally regulated, authentic people who exercise their minds. Story 17. In a group setting, when someone gets cut off mid-sentence, another person returns to them to allow them to finish their thought. That is respect. Story 18. My partner sent me a 28-second video of a snail in the rain that he came across when we were still early in our dating stage. It was so cute and innocent. If someone can get excited about these little things, I think it is a massive green flag. Story 19. Likes animals, or at least does not dislike animals. Personally, I do not trust people who dislike animals. Dark sense of humor. Does not base their entire personality on one thing such as smoking weed, drinking, guns, cars, or anything else. Ability to have a proper discussion. I do not mind if someone has a different political or other viewpoint than me. I enjoy it. What I cannot stand are people who refuse to discuss or listen once they find out they disagree on a particular topic. Story 20. When my now husband and I were first together, I went to stay at his flat overnight. He knew I had a problem with motor control and was terrified of breaking his crockery. So he bought me a special plastic plate and mug. He was so simple and generous that I knew he was someone special. We have been married 5 years and I use that plate daily. Story 21. When people see an animal and talk to it as if it is a good old friend, treating it with kindness, it does not matter if it is a dog, cat, puppy, kitten, crow, raven, elephant, sheep, cow, or chicken. I think it takes a genuinely good soul to be kind to animals and treat them with respect. Story 22. Someone who demonstrates introspection or self-awareness without prompting. For example, making a snap judgment about someone or a situation, then immediately saying, "Actually, you know what? That was not fair of me to say, and here is why." The ability to check yourself without needing someone else to do it for you seems to be somewhat rare. Story 23. When they thoroughly answer and then reciprocate a question I ask, I think, "Oh, good. I can actually talk to you." Story 24. He listened to me when I told him what my dog would do and what she would need to get comfortable around him. I did not realize how many other people say it's fine, reach out to touch her, or try to force the interaction to go their way. He has met her twice, and the second time she curled up in his legs. He has been absolutely respectful and wonderful to me, and this has made him top tier in my opinion. Story 25. When I see you with a group of people but you are talking to their animals, you are my tribe. Story 26. Ability to speak confidently. I love talking absolute nonsense. When someone responds with even more nonsense, I know we are going to have a great time together. Story 27. Give me a second to think about that question. Instead of blurting out the first thing that comes to mind or changing topics so quickly that it is clear they do not care about what you are saying. Story 28. I call it kind cynicism, a sort of biting, aware sense of humor, but never mean. It is hard to find, but you know it when you see it. Story 29. When people do not get defensive when called out on something, acknowledge that what they said or did might have been rude or hurtful, without trying to minimize it, owning up to it and apologizing. This quality is very rare. If I can do it, you can as well. Story 30. When they can argue the side they do not agree with, it shows they understand both sides and have some empathy. Story 31. When they are the only other person looking a bit overwhelmed in a loud group social situation or event, I always find my people that way. Story 32. Can elaborate on what they mean without social media buzzwords, but is not a snob about social media either. Story 33. If you share some of my nerdy interests and pick up on my popular culture references, we can be best friends. I have fully embraced being a huge nerd, so I have unfortunately lost touch with the average person. My career, interests, and way of life all have a high intellect spin to them. I love to innovate new ways to enable laziness for myself, and when I find something that works, I advocate for it. Next up is robot lawn mowers. I hope they work as advertised because they could be a game changer for my neighborhood. That is just my most recent example. Story 34. Picks up after themselves without needing to be told or getting into an argument. Engages in intellectual hobbies that are balanced and do not dominate their life. They treat service workers with respect. Story 35. They know more about Star Wars or Star Trek than I do. They suggest visiting a cemetery for a Valentine's Day date. Story 36. I have a very uncommon name, so it is a positive sign for me when someone takes care to ask how it is pronounced and actually pays attention to how I say it. It is kind of sad how many times people ask how it is pronounced but skip the listening part and just make nonsensical sounds at me. Story 37. They are passionate about their interests. I do want to hear about your niche hobby as a 16th century brooch collector. Your enthusiasm makes it fascinating. Story 38. Witty banter. If you understand what I am saying and respond with the same energy, you have my attention. Story 39. I was walking through the station with my partner when I saw a woman trying to lift a stroller with a baby up the stairs. While everyone else ignored her, he immediately stepped in and carried the stroller up the stairs for her. I often see these acts of kindness towards strangers from him, which make me very happy to be his girl. Story 40. I got my husband the other day. He was complaining about how weather applications are not very specific. It is more like wait and see. So, with a totally straight face, I said, "Yes. Oh my goodness. We should get one of those weather rocks. They are very accurate." He asked, "Really?" I said, "For sure. Dry means clear, wet means raining, white means snow, and gone means windy." He laughed and called me an unpleasant person, and I laughed a lot. Story 41. Being kind to people in the service industry and retail industry with no expectation of gain. I could not do their job, and I get very angry at people who are unnecessarily rude and nasty. The job is tough enough. Just be a kind and reasonable human. So many do not, though. Story 42. 1. Not having to fill the silence always. You just coexist together on days when you are both feeling low. 2. Getting irrationally excited about little things. 3. Giggling mid-argument because you cannot stay mad at each other for more than 5 minutes. Story 43. Banter shows their humor, wit, and playfulness. It is a huge green flag. Story 44. Self-deprecating humor. If you can make fun of yourself, we'll get along just fine because I do the same thing. Story 45. When I say a line from a movie or song and they respond with the next line, that is when I know I like the cut of their jib. Story 46. Being able to recognize their faults and the desire to improve. It is easy to admit when you are wrong, but much harder to say, "This is a part of my character I would like to change." Story 47. People who can help someone with problems or mistakes without blaming that person or acting like it is a big deal. You know you are in safe hands with someone who understands everyone makes mistakes and it is never that serious. Story 48. I started dating this guy, and one day we randomly started swapping instant messages back and forth in haikus. Then one day in the car, he started making up ridiculous lyrics to the Superman theme. When I started laughing, he doubled down and kept going. We did not want to tell people we met online because it was not as common at that point, so we made up a story about him accidentally sending a shuffleboard disc flying off the table and hitting me in the head. It was so insanely stupid, but I loved it. We are coming up on our 11th anniversary in a couple of weeks. Story 49. I had been out with a guy several times. One day we went to get lunch, and I had a stressful moment ordering and paying. When we sat down, I pulled the paper sleeve off my straw and started folding it into a tiny square, which I do when nervous. He watched me quietly, and when I finished folding mine, he handed me his paper sleeve so I could keep folding. We are not together anymore, but that was the moment I fell for him. Story 50. They do not defend the rich and taxing them. They are okay with paying more taxes if they make a lot of money too. Story 51. When someone instinctively offers to help clean up after a meal they did not cook, no hesitation, just jumps in. That is my kind of energy. Story 52. Turns their music down when other people enter their proximity, such as in a designated smoking area. Story 53. They love things. No, imsuri. You think I mean like? Anyone can like something. I want to see what you love. Show me your passion. Show me the things that get you energized. Show me what makes you wake up in the morning. If you can communicate about the things you love with passion, then you will always be a winner in my books. Story 54. You stack the tableware when done at a restaurant instead of expecting a server to do it for you. My parents instilled in me the need to clean before a server cleans. We would get in trouble if the server had to do too much cleaning. As a child, I always wondered, if we are paying someone to do a job, why would we do some of that job for them? Now that I am older, I understand. Story 55. Casually, not aggressively. Swearing within a short time of meeting. For example, I dropped my phone. Story 56. When an insect lands on them, they gently let it crawl onto their hand and then let it go without any drama. Story 57. The ability to remain silent. I am still learning how to do this myself. Not every moment must be filled with words. Story 58. A sense of dark humor, especially self-deprecating humor. I know this is kind of messed up, but it tells me that you have seen some difficult experiences. You are keeping it real while you choose to see the humor in the situation. Story 59. I do not know why, but I got excited when my ex and I were first talking, and she told me she also liked cane sugar soda. Story 60. For men, when they own and embrace something stereotypically feminine. Being a proud cat father, getting excited over buying flowers for the house, being an open fan of romantic comedies, that kind of thing. Story 61. Music choices provide both positive and negative indicators. Some positive indicators, many genres, at least some music from the past 5 to 10 years. Curiosity about music they have never heard before. Popular music in multiple languages. Classical music from other cultures. Story 62. When they know all the words to the classic rock songs and sing along when they come on. Apparently, I know an absurd amount of lyrics according to my friends. Story 63. A good base of information, people I can discuss multiple topics with, such as history and science, and have them not say, I have no idea what that is, every couple of minutes. Please do not make me explain string theory as a joke. I just finished explaining Victorian medical practices. Also, good taste and understanding of media, which usually comes with the latter. Story 64. When they are kind to animals. If you can be compassionate to a creature you cannot understand or benefit from, a creature innocent of malice, that is a definite green flag to me. Story 65. Enduring and totally unfazed by me going on about not only how I became a furry, which was their original question, but also about what a furry is and is not. Additionally, being unbothered by and embracing my quirks and eccentricities as someone who is neurodivergent and has invisible disabilities. Story 66. My now husband had his truck bed loaded with neatly separated recycling, all ready to drop off at the recycling center following our very first date. Story 67. Someone who matches small commitments without hesitation. For example, if I tell you a secret, then you tell me one in return. This keeps conversations alive and engaging. Instead of just listening or judging, they actively participate with you. Story 68. So I'm stuck in this painfully slow coffee line, already annoyed and scrolling on my phone to stay sane. Then the person behind me says, if they put as much effort into the coffee as they do making us wait, maybe it'd be worth it. I glance back and say, at least they're consistent. That starts some conversation and sarcasm with jokes and the kind of roasting that makes me think, okay, this person gets me. We end up talking while waiting, then sit outside for a long time just chatting about random stuff. They are honest, funny, and actually caring beneath all the sarcasm. Right then, I know this is someone I want around. Finding someone who can turn a terrible wait into a good time, that's rare. That's my kind of people. Story 69. It depends on the context, of course, but if I see someone unexpectedly burst out laughing, especially if it is at themselves, they immediately gain some trust from me. Story 70. My cousin-in-law, my wife's cousin, started dating this guy a year ago. He is my man crush because he has zero ego when it comes to nonsense. He is perfect in his ability to let things roll off, address them maturely, and move on. It is like kung fu of human relationships. I honestly envy how he can turn everything into a mature conversation instead of a conflict. He is proposing to her today, and she is so lucky to have him. I can't wait to annoy him with my "we're best friends now because we're family" vibes. Story 71. When they are helping someone less fortunate than themselves, but doing it quietly and not for attention. Story 72. If I say something nonsensical in a very serious tone, and they still know I am just joking instead of assuming I have had a stroke. Story 73. When a person knows exactly how to read your mind because they understand everything you want and are willing to do those things for you, that is a clear sign that your partner truly cares about you. Story 74. Someone who makes movie and television show references, especially Star Wars references, is a person after my own heart. Story 75. You say, hi, smile, wave, or acknowledge when anyone is walking by in a rural area or on a hike. If you have your headphones on and completely ignore other people, it is rude. I am sorry, I do not know what your culture is, but it is still rude to pass someone while walking or hiking without at least acknowledging that you see them. You get a pass if you are actually jogging. Story 76. When they listen and want to have a back and forth conversation, showing that they care about my opinion and do not just want to talk about themselves. Story 77. My kids and I were at a gas station once and bought a couple of candy bars. The total came to exactly $3.50. My kids both said, $3.50. The cashier smiled and said, goddamn Loch Ness monster. If you understand, we are also friends now. Story 78. When I met my best friend, we did not bond over the things we liked. We bonded over the things we hated. Story 79. If they have fun-colored hair, pride symbols such as buttons or artsy tattoos that are not religious, I will be less on guard. I am in a very conservative area and usually have to wear a mask when I talk to people. I am a queer, non-Christian liberal, but I often hide that around town for the safety of my children. When someone stands out as alternative in some way like that, it is a bit of a relief, and I know I can probably relax a bit and not need to watch what I say as closely. Story 80. People who smile while they talk and do not dominate the conversation. If both parties are enjoying themselves and sharing the conversation equally. Story 81. Same sense of humor, as in I can see by their body language or facial expression that their brain just entered the gutter during an innocent conversation. Story 82. Taking accountability for their actions, accepting their faults, and demonstrating a willingness to fix them. Story 83. The sound of their laugh. If it is one of those low, oh no laughs, then I can instantly tell we have the same humor. Story 84. Dead baby jokes right off the bat. The first day I was with this application, we were feeling each other out and she asked me to tell her the worst joke I knew. I was pretty nervous because contenders for that are pretty awful, so I told her to go first. Her joke was way worse than what I would have told, and we were instant best friends. Neither of us work there anymore, but we still hang out and talk. Story 85. When they are not afraid of being weird with me. I am the weird kid, and I like weird stuff. When I am making new friends and someone thinks that was a weird joke or something like that, I am like, yes, you are not my type of person. Story 86. Matching chaotic energy. If I tell a terrible, low-quality dad joke and they laugh, it is usually an instant win. There are many other things, but they are more similar to vibe checks, which are difficult to narrow down to just one thing. Story 87. Simultaneous sincerity, vulnerability, and maturity. It may sound like a lot, but it can be conveyed in one sentence. Simply talking about past trauma without being overly emotional or making light of it. For example, it was a rough year after my brother died. That statement is sincere, vulnerable, and mature. Story 88. Not being shy to talk. I have a big mouth and I like it when I find another big mouth. With some people, it feels like a monologue followed by painful, awkward silence. Then you have to ask a question to get the conversation going again without being a hog. Feels like an interview. Story 89. Good question, original poster. I usually try singing the first part of a tune and see who fills in the rest. For example, and to see if any of my friends are out here. Ooh-hoo. Baya bayai. Gotta get you home with me tonight. Story 90. When we both sang along with the line, this woman does not know about Pangea, while Little Dicky's song Pillow Talking was playing. Story 91. When she joins in on my unfunny humor and lets it all spiral out of control with me. Yes, that is why I married her. Story 92. I love when people are comfortable with themselves and make little attempt to change around others. Story 93. When someone tells me they were a big fan of the Mark Tom and Travis Show live Blink-182 album growing up. Story 94. They love going to concerts and have similar tastes in music, food, and traveling up north away from the city. Story 95. Child of a Wisconsin dairy farmer. I live in Wisconsin, though I am not originally from here. Every person I have ever met who grew up on a dairy farm is genuine, hardworking, kind, and fun. Story 96. If there is the sound of glass breaking and they immediately start humming the Stone Cold Steve Austin theme. Story 97. When they are extremely loving towards animals and the animals love them back, it is even better when they baby talk. That is so adorable when people, especially men, are over the moon for their animals. Story 98. Being outside, not outdoorsy, going on walks to end with a cute cafe or just sitting and reading outside. Story 99. Talking to animals is not like talking to people, but in a playful way. Saying phrases like, "Is that so?" When a bird is being loud or asking pets, "Does that taste good?" When they are chewing on something shows that they are unlikely to be unkind to animals and brave enough to make awkward jokes confidently. Instant friendship. Story 100. Nerding out. I am highly susceptible to picking up new interests, and sometimes the enthusiasm can be infectious. Story 101. My cat chose my husband. He passed her vibe check. She disliked everyone, including me. She had great taste. Story 102. Being kind to pigeons. I loathe people who shoo them away just because they can. My boyfriend apologizes to any pigeons he crosses and tries to keep a distance so as not to startle them. Gives me big heart eyes. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.